Greetings, everyone. Well, I had to save this one for a little later in the month so we could truly appreciate the artistic mastery here. Dracula versus Frankenstein, the ultimate titanic battle of titans for the ages that we've all been waiting for forever. Yeah, I've got things to say about this one, so let's get right to it, shall we? Dracula vs. Frankenstein, today's Halloween movie review on the Multimedia Chronicles. Welcome back. This is a film. Okay, where do we begin with Dracula vs. Frankenstein? Well, it came out in December of 1971 and was the last released film co-starring Lon Chaney Jr. So it's actually the last film released of his career. It was not the last one he filmed, however. He filmed another one 4 months after filming his scenes for this called The Female Bunch. But The Female Bunch was actually released in August of 1971. So it was the last one he filmed. It was released before this one. Yeah, anyway. So Dracula vs. Frankenstein actually started out as a biker movie. Yeah, it was actually originally going to be a sequel to a sort of biker action exploitation film called Satan's Sadists. And Russ Tamblyn, who many of you may remember from West Side Story back in the day, or more recently from Twin Peaks as Dr. Jacoby. Yeah, Russ Tamblyn was in quite a few of those biker movies from the same production company. And so he plays a character in it who just kind of drifts in and out, because apparently when they decided to make it a horror movie instead, they actually scrapped a lot of the footage that they'd shot for the biker movie. But there were some scenes featuring the same characters, I guess, so they kept bits of his stuff in. So he just seems to be in the movie for no reason, just as this random biker gang guy who's in like a few scenes. But anyway, so Dracula versus Frankenstein. Okay, so they filmed a whole bunch of stuff for this other movie, and decided to turn it into a horror movie. So it wasn't until like months later that they filmed the Dracula and Frankenstein stuff to kind of shoehorn in to what had been filmed already. So J. Carrol Naish, who was of course a longtime veteran of film, this was his final film as well, actually, filmed all of his scenes for the other movie, where he was basically playing this mad doctor running a horror house at a carnival. And then he had his assistant, played by Lon Chaney Jr., going around murdering young women so he could perform experiments on them, or something like that. Yeah, I don't know why he wanted his assistant to go out and axe murder the women first. Why didn't he just kidnap them and then bring them back to have experiments? I don't know. The first of many questions I have regarding the plot. So, meanwhile, Dracula has discovered the buried remains of the Frankenstein monster, and, uncovers the remains and brings it back to this doctor, Dr. DeRay, who runs the spook house. As it turns out, Dr. DeRay is actually the last surviving descendant of Victor Frankenstein, and is essentially continuing, not the same experiments, but continuing experiments. And so Dracula wants him to revive the Frankenstein monster for some reason. Something about creating an army of the undead so you can take over the world or something. Honestly, I don't know why he wanted to revive the Frankenstein monster. It seemed kind of convoluted to me. So anyway, he revives the Frankenstein monster, and the Frankenstein monster goes rampaging around killing a bunch of people. Meanwhile, the axe murdering guy is also rampaging around killing a bunch of people. And meanwhile, the one of the main characters, she's looking for her sister. Her sister was murdered by the axe murderer guy. So they find the connection to the spook house, and it just gets all crazy. Now, I did this movie as a group viewing where I watched it with a whole bunch of the viewers over on Twitch, and a lot of us were kind of wondering as we're watching. It's just kind of moving along. It's like there's a little spook house story. There's Lon Chaney as the crazed axe murderer guy. There's Russ Tamblyn as the biker guy. There's the lounge singer chick looking for her missing sister. So at one point we all just kind of wondered, like, so does Dracula fight Frankenstein at any point in this movie called Dracula versus Frankenstein? So I postulated at the time, I said, you know what, I bet it's going to be the last 5 minutes of the movie. And sure enough, last 5 minutes of the movie. So Dracula and the monster are being chased by the heroes of the film, and they're chased into this industrial complex, and the hero guy uses a flare to get at the monster, and the monster gets the flare in his face, gets all confused, and attacks Dracula by mistake. And Dracula's like, no, not me, him, not me, him. So they're fighting and duking it out. Finally, the monster realizes his mistake and goes and attacks them. And I can't remember. It's a little fuzzy after that point. Honestly, like, I almost immediately blocked the majority of this movie from my memory. It's not that it was traumatic. It just wasn't particularly memorable. So anyway, fast forward a little bit. Dracula's got the girl, and they're going into the forest. And he's going to turn her into a vampire or sacrifice her or something. Again, not entirely clear what the motivations are here. So anyway, as the girl is restrained, the Frankenstein monster just suddenly falls in love with her and then starts duking it out with Dracula when Dracula goes to kill her. And Dracula literally Black Knight from Monty Python's Holy Grail's the Frankenstein monster to death. Like, literally. You've seen that scene in the Holy Grail? Yeah, that's what happens. And then, I guess the fight took a little while because he takes a little bit too long to get back to the house and ends up dying literally on the doorstep in the sun. The end of the Titanic battle of the century that you've been waiting for. Now, convoluted plot hobbled together from many disparate elements due to the fact that they couldn't seem to make up their mind what kind of movie they were making in the first place. Aside, this is definitely one of those movies that you can have a lot of fun watching with a bunch of people. Essentially, if you're sitting at home alone watching this movie, I'm so sorry. But with a bunch of friends and maybe a few brewskis, this is a lot of fun. It's one of those movies where it's so ridiculous and bad and cheesy that you can't help but have fun just kind of razzing it and MST3King it as you go. Now, that said, I think the filmmakers were quite aware that they had a bit of a hot mess on their hands and just kind of had a bit of fun with it. And there's a lot of little tidbits in here for horror fans to spot. I mean, of course, seeing Lon Chaney Jr. in his final released film is an absolute treat. And honestly, the guy aged really gracefully. I mean, he must have been, in his 60s by that point? I know he died. He wasn't terribly old, but I know that he'd had some problems with alcoholism and such throughout his life, so he hadn't led the healthiest lifestyle. But he looked really good, like, for his age, you know. I was really, really quite surprised. So the final scene with Lon Chaney Jr., he's chasing the girl across the rooftops, and then the police shoot him. The music in that scene, apparently, is music cues from some of the old Universal monster movies that he's most well known for. So a nice little Easter egg for Lon Chaney Jr. fans to spot. That was kind of a nice touch. Should also mention that notable actor of small stature, Angelo Rosito, is in this as Grasbo. He's kind of the barker at the front of the horror house. Some of you may remember him as Master, the shorter half of Master Blaster from Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. He was also one of the main characters in Freaks, Todd Browning's Freaks from back in the day. Also keep a sharp eye out for a cameo by Forrest J. Ackerman, legendary horror magazine publisher, sitting in a car and making a deal with Dracula at one point. I have to say, as far as the appearances of the two title monsters, this is a pretty badass poster. Love this poster. Yeah, neither Dracula nor the monster look anything like that in the movie. Dracula, everybody kept calling him Disco Dracula because he kind of had, bigger hair and had this badass goatee and stuff. And strangely enough, obviously some kind of artistic decision here, whenever Dracula speaks, it's always in reverb. Yeah, I don't know why they did that. I mean, I would think like if he's like hypnotizing someone or something like that, then you could use some reverb. But he was constantly in reverb. Every one of his lines of dialogue was in reverb. A little bit much for making Dracula more ethereal, I guess. And the Frankenstein monster, wow, without question, the worst Frankenstein monster makeup I've ever seen. This is what he looked like. You know what it reminded me of? You know those shrunken head dolls you can make from dehydrated apples? Yeah, that's what it immediately made me think of. So I tried to rationalize it logically in my head, and I was like, well, maybe it's because he was buried for so long. He's like partly decomposed or something. Oh, wait a minute, I'm trying to apply logic to this. What was I thinking? And I should also mention, with regards to the climactic battle that we've been waiting the whole movie for, we were joking at the time, like, when Frankenstein gets the flare in his face, it's like, wait a minute, is this it? Is this the catalyst for their big battle? He gets confused because of the flare, and that's the whole reason for their battle? Well, there's a deleted scene on there that actually shows the original ending. And the simple answer to that question is yes. That actually was the original catalyst for their climactic battle, was he gets the flare in the face, gets confused, they fight. Dracula, by the way, has like this lightning ring that he can use to zap people with. So he zaps the monster with the lightning ring and kills it, and then goes after our intrepid heroes, the guy and the girl, and ends up getting impaled on some construction equipment or something, and that's how Dracula meets his end. So yeah, kind of glad they tagged on that other ending and went with the Monty Python ending instead, because quite frankly, if that was the big climactic battle, it wasn't very big or climactic. So yeah, not sure what else I can say about this one other than, like I said, gather some friends around, have a few drinks, have a bunch of laughs together. That's the kind of movie this is. This is not something you want to sit down when you want high art. Or, I mean, also just watch it for sort of the novelty factor of the little, the little things for horror fans. I mean, seeing J. Carrol Naish in his final role, seeing Lon Chaney in his final released film, seeing Angelo Rosito, and picking out all the little nods to older, better horror movies. And there you have it. So, yeah, that was a movie. Thank you very much for watching, and big thanks to my Patreon sponsors, and I'll see you next time. Until then, sayonara.